Hello, I'm Marco D'Angelo, joined by Johnny Detroit. We are going to preview the 2011 Detroit Lions NFL season win totals. We'll talk about their Super Bowl odds. Johnny, you're from Detroit, obviously. Tell us about the Detroit Lions. What are your thoughts? Give us the lines, the win total, and the Super Bowl odds, and break them down for us.
Well, first off, I feel like a total square homer person by what I'm going to eventually close this with, so I'm just going to preface with that. I'm a huge Detroit Lions fan. I've had season tickets since, Barry was in town back at the Silver Dome. And to be a fan of these, the stretch in Barry went MIA has been really tough.
Have you had a winning season?
Since Barry left? No. They've been total garbage.
Yeah.
But hey, it gets tougher and tougher on that check every year, but I do. So I'm a real fan, I have a thing back home I always say, it's easy to be a Detroit Red Wing fan, but it's really hard to be a Detroit Lions. Those are the real fans. But real quick is the Lions right now, they opened at 30-1 to win the NFC Championship. Right now it's sitting at 15-1. For the Super Bowl, they opened at 75-1, and they're down to 31. This is coming from the MGM Resorts where we picked this up, but technically at the Bellagio. So both of those odds are cut in half. I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl and they're going to win the NFC Championship, but the odds for what was anticipated have cut in half already going into the season. My guess is, the reports out of training camp of Stafford playing well and him meeting with the trainers and the surgeries and whatnot, the obvious draft picks that they did. The season win totals right now, it opened at 7.5 even over -120 on the under, and it's already jumped to on the over -135 plus 115. So, you have your odds for the NFC Championship, your odds for the Super Bowl, and then your over-under wins, all, at least for now, whether it's public, whether it's some sharp combination of both, lines makers are adjusting that they think this is going to be a better Detroit Lions team. The video can go on forever if we just break down all the mathematical things what we'll go into figuring out, over-unders or how you're going to pick something out. So I'm going to stick with some basics of how I came up with my selection. Is I like to look what they did last year, what they did in the off season, and then look on what they're doing preparation-wise, training camp, what you're hearing out of the camp, going into the regular season, and then obviously looking at their schedule and who they're playing. One of the things is, they went 6-10 last year, but I broke down their whole season, and they had 5 winnable games. A couple actually they should have really won. So 6-10 could easily been flip-flop. They could have had 3-4 more wins. They had that opener against the Bears where Calvin caught that pass in the end zone that they disallowed, loser. Then they actually lost to the Bears again later in that season in a close game. They had a close game against the Packers. They had a game that they had a nice comeback late against the Giants. Could they have won that game? Probably not, but it was winnable. I mean, they had a comeback. They were competitive. They went to overtime against the Jets, and then they had a game against the Bills that they pissed away late. They finished the season 4-0, so on a high note. Stafford, good quarterback. Everything that I'm hearing, in the past is, Mitchell, we had a running joke in our season ticket section of, we used to say that the Lions had a wide receiver called 00 and he's invisible because he used to always throw to some invisible receiver. Harrington, he had a couple games in and then he was getting booed. Stafford, for a guy that has missed so many games, still has huge support from the team, the staff, and the fans, which, we're a tough bunch for considering how bad that they've been. So the key number one is going to be health. Stafford stays healthy, it's a totally different team. I mean, they went 6-10 last year with tons of winnable games, finished out 4-0 with Stafford obviously being injured. Their front line is monstrous. I mean, the huge pickup, in the draft of Nick Farley, they got Sue, just monsters there. Another thing that, to me, is, because the key things people are talking about is Stafford being healthy and that, front line is, Javid Best suffered from turf toe last year. And, they picked up LaShore, the running back, to me, which is kind of give them a dual threat. Now, Javid Best is going to be able to, one, hopefully be healthy for the full season, as they could use him more in the passing and the third down attack, and then mix him and LaShore up, which to me opens up that offense even more. And one of the big things, too, is also the chemistry. I follow, being a Detroit Lions homer and a season ticket holder, I listen to, local radio. I follow all the beat writers following the training camp. During the lockout, some of the guys in the team, they got together and they were practicing like it was regular, there was no lockout going on, and the majority of the players showed up. So they have the team chemistry. I have the Lions going 9-7, at worst 8-8. I mean, last year's team could easily win 8-8 and better, and you're talking, turf toe job at best. They didn't have these pickups. I mean, I forgot to even mention Titus Young, and what I'm hearing, that's going to add a lot of explosiveness to the offense, and people question that draft pick, and in my eyes, is if you have a healthy Stafford, and you got a two-tier running back attack, and now you got Calvin Johnson, Titus Young to go for that deep ball, if he's darting down the field and you got to keep up with him, and now Calvin Johnson's open to do what he does, it's impossible to stop that guy. If they stay healthy, they're going to have a great offense, a great front line. I can't see any worse than 8-8. I personally, and it's going to sound like a homer, I think taking the Lions over 7.5 is a steal.
Well, to give just a couple points to build on, this is your play. Officially, I don't have anything on this game, but a couple points I'll make. One, this is year 3 of the Jim Schwartz era. And generally speaking, when you have a new coach come in, overhaul things and do it his way, the first year is just, rebuilding everything. Second year, you're starting to get that continuity. Where the expectations are, everybody always talks about that 5-year plan,
right,
is year 3, you need to start seeing the ship moving in that direction. Now, we saw a glimpse of that, as you said, finishing out last season the way they did. So I think that's where the momentum is to build on. They come in. Now, it's a shame that you lose the preseason, or not the preseason, but spring ball, where everybody had to come in late because of the lockout. So you lose a little bit of momentum, and teams are going to be playing, catch up a little bit. But I think this team has, a good shot to improve. What I like, and it's something that I do, and when I break down the couple teams that I'm going to talk about, I look at the schedule. And the thing that jumps out to me with the Lions is, obviously you always have your division games. You're going to face your division rivals home and away every year. It's those out-of-division games. And this year, the Lions division all play the AFC West on their schedule this year.
That's a great point.
Playing the AFC West, you're going to have San Diego, but you're also going to have Kansas City, Denver, and Oakland. Denver, Oakland, and Kansas City, I all have them regressing from where they were last year for obvious different reasons. In fact, one of my best win totals that I gave out earlier this year in the podcast was under on the Oakland Raiders. I think, total disarray, changing coaches and everything. So that's another good point for Detroit. I can't punch any holes in it, so, if RJ was on the show, this is where, he would have to, give his,
the head tilt
and say,
well, Marco.
Okay, I'll give you my blessing, Johnny. Detroit over. So there you have it. Direct from Detroit. You heard it from the horse's mouth.
Total homer pick.
Yeah.
But, one game to really watch, too, is the Chicago Bears game. We had a pre-sale as a season ticket holder to get tickets in advance for that. And literally 2 minutes in, you're sitting upper level. So, the fans in Detroit are excited. And, we're a rabid bunch. I've been to a lot of sporting events. I've been to the Super Bowl, Ryder Cup, Kentucky Derby. I've seen WrestleMania, Mayweather fights. And I'll tell you, the Detroit Lions fans are nut jobs. And that place is going to be rocking. And Monday Night Football against the Bears, that, they're going to remember that stuff that started last season, with that Calvin Johnson thing, the whole rivalry with Chi-Town. Ford Field's going to be rocking. And I really think that game is going to be key in front of their fans. And I think 8-8. I'm having them 9-7, possible playoff run. Knock on fake glass, but I think the over 7.5 is a steal. I know it's a total homer pick, but that's what I'm going with. Over Lions 7.5.
There you have it. We're going to be back. We're going to preview 2 more NFL win totals. We're going to take a look at the Cleveland Browns and the Minnesota Vikings. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.